All right, this exercise is strictly for Macintosh users. You Windows people can move along to the next exercise. I don't want you to feel excluded. It's just that Windows doesn't happen to suffer from this particular problem. And the problem is this: even though Adobe and its various applications have been out there using a certain group of keyboard shortcuts for about 20 years now, a little more in the case of Illustrator, although, of course, the keyboard shortcut set has grown up over time. Apple, over the course of the last decade, has decided to usurp many of those shortcuts and assign them to OS-level operations. Now, you can defer to Apple if you want to and keep the keyboard shortcuts exactly the way they are, but if you do that, you're going to limit your access to Illustrator, and some of the operations I show you won't work properly. So I suggest you go ahead and modify Apple shortcuts ever so slightly, as I'm about to explain in this video. Now, I'm looking at a series of images that I've shot and prepared for you that are found inside the 00 setup folder, inside of a subfolder called Mac F keys, if you want to open them up and follow along, or you can just, of course, watch what's going on inside the movie. Now, the first step is to go to the Apple menu, the one that looks like an Apple logo, and choose the System Preferences command in order to bring up the System Preferences dialog box, which is this thing right here that you see before you, except it'll be filled with icons. Then you want to click on the icon that says either Keyboard and Mouse or just Keyboard. So under Leopard, it's going to be Keyboard and Mouse. Under Snow Leopard and later, it's going to be just Keyboard. Then you'll see this panel of options right here. So you start with the Keyboard tab highlighted. Notice this checkbox. It says use all F1, F2, etc. keys as standard function keys. I want you to go ahead and turn this checkbox on. Now, what this means is from now on, if you have, let's say, a MacBook or a MacBook Pro or a wireless keyboard or some other keyboard that has various icons on the function keys, by which I mean that you can raise and lower the volume or change screen brightness, that kind of thing, by pressing function keys, now you will have to press the FN key, which is the function key, a little confusing, but the FN key along with that F key, F9, F10, etc., in order to change your volume and so on. And now F9, F10, etc. by themselves will perform certain operations, bringing up panels mostly inside the Adobe applications, which is very useful, by the way. So I suggest you work this way. It does take some getting used to. All right, next I'm going to move on to keyboard shortcuts. So you want to click on the keyboard shortcuts tab right there, and you will switch over to your keyboard shortcuts list. This is how the keyboard shortcuts look inside of Leopard. That is OS 10.5 and earlier, by the way. And you would scroll down until you get to the dock, expose, and dashboard list, and then you would change automatically hide and show the dock to Control D, and you would change all windows to Control F9 and so on. I'm going to explain how those work in just a moment, but I want you to see that this is where they're located in Leopard and earlier. However, I'm guessing that most of you are working with Snow Leopard or later, that is OS 10.6 and later. So I'm going to switch over to this panel here. This is how things look now in Snow Leopard. And notice that you have a left-hand list of options that allow you to switch between different groups of shortcuts. So we'll start with Dashboard and Dock. And what I want you to do is go to Turn Dock Hiding On/Off and click on what will appear as Command Option D. And by the way, Apple uses a standard of sort of indecipherable symbols for these. The cloverleaf symbol is Command. You probably already know that. Option looks like sort of a line with a line next to it. It's very hard to identify. Anyway, whatever that keyboard shortcut is, click on it, make it highlighted so that it has a little bit of a rectangle around it, and then press Control. And by Control, I mean the Control key that is spelled out as the word Control, D, and it'll appear as D. And don't press them sequentially, press those keys at the same time. Then go to Dashboard here, click on it to make it active, and press Control F12 as opposed to F12 by itself. The next thing I want you to do is click on Expose and Spaces, and you'll switch to this group of options. And I want you to change these guys, all windows, for example, from F9 to Control F9, application windows from F10 to Control F10, and then desktop from F11 to Control F11. Then I want you to drop all the way down to Spotlight here. And this is very, very important. Unless you want to mess up your zooming capabilities inside of Illustrator, you will change these settings. And so I recommend you click on whatever the top keyboard shortcut is, something like Command Spacebar. and you change it to Command Control F1. And I'm reading in the order that is conventional, but for those of you who would prefer I read it in the order of the symbols, it's Control Command F1. Either way you say it, just press it, and then go down to the next option here, and this would be Control Option Command F1. And then next, drop down to this guy, Universal Access. And make sure that zoom out and zoom in are set to these keyboard shortcuts here, which happens to be in this case Control Option Command minus and Control Option Command plus. The equals key and the plus key are the same key. And again, these are just my recommendations. You can come up with something different if you like. And then finally, what I like to do is go to Application Shortcuts and go ahead and assign a shortcut to the system preferences themselves, so that you can bring up system preferences anytime you like. This is outside the realm of needing to work with Illustrator. This is just a great Macintosh trick in general. And for those of you who are thinking, how would you know you're working under Windows 7? Actually, I spend most of my time on a Mac, just so you know. All right, so menu title, what you want to do is type in the word System Preferences, and you have to get the spelling exactly right, the capitalization as well. And then you can either type ... like this. The dots have to be there. So period, 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 3 times in a row. Or you can enter an ellipsis symbol, which happens to be option semicolon. I know, weird, but that also works. And then I assigned a keyboard shortcut of Control F1. And then from that point on, you can bring up the system preferences as easily as pressing Control F1. When you're done, go ahead and click the close box here in order to close out of system preferences. And that should take care of any overlap between Apple's keyboard shortcuts and Illustrator/Adobe's keyboard shortcuts. In the next exercise, I'm going to show you how to install the all-important Best Workflow color settings.